Now let's oh boy. It's is it tariff time? I think it's tariff time. I think it's tariff time. Okay. So up until now, the results of tariffs, because it's been like so back and forth whether or not the government has decided we're actually doing the tariffs or whether it's just a joke, which at its core I maintain it is still a grift. It's been hard to tell what the concrete implications of these sorts of tariffs will look like. But now we have some information about shipments and inventory and how tariffs will affect that. I've seen this from a couple different people. I don't know the original source that they're getting it from. I haven't had really the time to look for that. I'll try to verify it if this becomes a segment. But from what I've heard, the yeah, I love that's true. We are pro dollar devaluation and textile manufactories in Trump's America. Many such cases. You know, it's funny. My granddad actually worked in a textile factory in the United States. You know, like he was a career man too. Worked there his whole life. Anyways, look, that's not entirely germane to the discussion here. So evidently, the last ship from China will dock on the West Coast on April 29th, which is tomorrow at the time of recording this. I'm recording this on April 28th. And the last Chinese ship will arrive on the East Coast on May the 10th. After that, no more shit from China. No more shipments after May the 10th will arrive in the United States. And that's really not good, because that means that basically anything that says made in China on it after May 10th will definitely stop appearing on store shelves, or whatever the like time frame after May 10th that it typically takes from shipping at the port to get to inventory on the shelves. It could be like a week or a month, even somewhere in that time frame between the last ship arriving at port and that stuff getting to the store shelf. But that's about when we're going to start seeing the shortages start. In fact, from I have a article here from, what was it, investors.com, you know, one of those financial news outlets that's situationally useful to refer to. Firm predicts empty shelves and recession by June. So that tracks. If the last ship is getting here in late April to early May, then yeah, by June, we're going to start seeing store shelves being empty. We're going to experience proper shortages of goods from China. We get a lot of shit from China. But the big kicker is that because of how international shipping works, because of how interconnected commerce is, it's not just stuff from China that comes over on ships that leave from Chinese ports, right? Those ships are not like, it's not like a one-stop thing, right? China is a stopping point for a number of other shipments that come from countries that have to travel a certain shipping route, which means Vietnam, Cambodia, you know, anywhere in Southeast Asia, really, Taiwan as well, sometimes, I think, and any of the countries in that area, potentially even some stuff from India and that part of the world that gets shipped east instead of like going on the western trade route, like around Africa or something. So basically anything that stops in China at any point that like gets onto a Chinese ship, which is more than just stuff that's made in China, is no longer going to be coming to the United States as of like basically right now, but that's going to start being reflected on store shelves on like in late May to early June. So made in Vietnam, made in Cambodia, made in Thailand, made in China, made in, wherever. Even stuff that's made in like Bangladesh or India, we're going to stop seeing that stuff in the United States. It truly is it's going to be like a series of shortages probably to rival the Great Depression, and that means mostly like the kinds of goods that we're not going to receive anymore are day-to-day goods, consumer goods, textiles, school supplies, office supplies, all that sort of stuff. A lot of stuff that like, you would go and just casually sort of order because you need a replacement or something on Amazon. We're not going to really have that stuff anymore. This is the face of economic collapse. Asset management firm Apollo Global Management forecasts trucking demand stopping in about a month, resulting in empty shelves and a recession this summer as President Trump's trade war policies are bringing about changes in global shipping not seen since the coronavirus pandemic, with ocean carriers readying for a significantly reduced demand, according to analysts and observers. Specifically in focus, U.S. trade with China amid the back and forth over tariffs and possible deals. The uncertainty has led to a decrease in shipping volumes from China to North America, with cancellations currently at 50%, according to global logistics firm Flexport. Reports as of last week. National Retail Federation, whose members include Walmart and Target and others, forecast earlier this month that the U.S. import cargo volume will fall at least 20% year over year in the second half of 2025 as U.S. companies pause orders from China. That's a very optimistic estimate. At least I think so. Big retailers that rely on China-made goods like Amazon, Walmart, and Target are also set to feel impact from Trump's trade war and the shipping changes. Yeah, that's something that I'm worrying about, thinking about, is that basically every store in America that stocks inventory relies to some degree on Chinese, Vietnamese, Thai, and like Cambodian, whatever, manufactured goods, just because it's so cheap to outsource labor there and to requisition inventory from stuff that gets shipped here and stuff like that. In addition to all the like Amazon stuff that, like, granted, these are cheap, low quality items, right? But regardless, they are easy to get. So easy, in fact, that drop shipping businesses can like deal in the purchase and sale of this stuff as middlemen without even having any inventory to begin with, right? Like, all of that is going to be hit incredibly hard. I feel like, if anything, it seems like the big box stores and Amazon are kind of going to be made into shells of their former selves, precisely because of how much of their business model relies on mass-produced cheap goods available for stocking on their shelves or, in their online catalogs from China, because China manufactures a shit ton of stuff, as do countries in Southeast Asia and in South Asia, where labor is extremely cheap, where the workers don't get paid jack shit, and where, where America outsourced all the jobs to in the 1980s and 90s, Kind of awkward, but good use of mushroom nonetheless. So if you need school supplies, it may be wise to buy them now. Basically, is what I'm saying from a individual like advice guru level. I don't know. Or make sure you have some sturdy shit on hand. Yeah, that and stuff like this was always going to be the result of the tariffs, right? To the extent that they stayed in place. Tariffs are designed to limit the presence of international business and industry in your country. And that can be useful in certain instances if you are a country in the global south that is very heavily subject to economic predation by a country like America. You know, if you are a country in sub-Saharan Africa, you know, extremely economically underdeveloped, tariffs can be a useful tool. It is going to hurt, but it's going to be useful in the long term, because the more you develop a local industrial base and the more you can dictate industrial production on your own terms, the less leverage that the IMF and other like international businesses have to basically create an extremely lopsided trade relationship, not just in the sense of like they sell more stuff to you than they buy or whatever, but in the sense of like truly tying your country on the end of a string by like draining wealth from you, you know, like the way this happens in a lot of third world countries is that there is a manufacturing base there, but it is owned by foreign companies or even just companies that have a presence internationally, whereby the capital sort of leaves the country. It's an extractive relationship. And that's what tariffs are designed to prevent. But we benefit from that extractive relationship. We're on the other end of it as the United States. We're the one country in the world where tariffs would not be useful in this way. You know? Unless you mean the auto industry, but I mean, I kind of hate the American auto industry because, you know, the American auto industry makes cars to be debt traps, and the cars are also like not that great, and they're all like proprietary shit. So, you know. So, you know, the tariffs in America seem to, you know, are doing exactly what tariffs do. The problem is that America was already on top. The tariffs are just going to hurt. And there's no long-term gain that the tariffs could possibly have for the United States that would outweigh the position that we were in before implementing them. We were the global hegemon already. We didn't need an economic boost from tariffs. You know, we benefited from international trade more than just about any other country on Earth. Also, the reason that Trump said that he wanted to do tariffs, part of the thing, like, one of the million reasons that they said for, like, doing tariffs, in addition to, like, oh, we need to devalue the dollar or something like that, which is surprisingly transparent. They said, like, oh, we want to bring manufacturing jobs back. But, like, manufacturing jobs kind of suck in the way that they exist overseas. Like, the only way you could do manufacturing in the United States to be economically viable is if labor conditions were as bad or worse than they are in a country like Bangladesh, China, or Vietnam. Hell, it'd have to actually be a lot worse than countries like China, because as much manufacturing as China currently does, they actually are also starting to have this problem where, this economic problem where, you know, labor in China is actually starting to get more expensive. So they're like, well, we want to, you know, exploit workers, but our standards are too high. We can't exploit them hard enough for business to still be profitable in doing certain types of manufacturing. So they even have to outsource it and stuff, you know? It would either be that, like sweatshop conditions, which are not good, and nobody should be expected to take a job like that, or it would manufacturing would be incredibly expensive and wildly like out of step with people's incomes. It genuinely, it would be, you know, whichever way you go, people who work a manufacturing job in this country, if the tariffs are for what the administration says that they are for, anybody in manufacturing wouldn't really be able to afford the goods that they manufacture, right? In the one scenario, if they're paid proper wages, wages still aren't high enough because costs get like so inflated by, you know, the price of manufacturing in America, and like the you know, the return for shareholders and all that shit. You know, you have good wages, but they're just not high enough to buy anything. Or if you have sweatshop conditions and you're still manufacturing them for cheap, then congratulations, you've manufactured them for cheap, and there are some people who aren't working those jobs that can afford those goods. But anybody working that job who to produce those goods wouldn't be able to afford them on store shelves because they get paid less than what the goods are actually worth to make them. You know, it's a economic conundrum for which tariffs are incapable of providing a good answer. Bringing manufacturing back to the United States doesn't really solve anything because the issue isn't like the nature of the issue being experienced where small town America is being hollowed out, right? And all the other negative consequences of outsourcing manufacturing to begin with are a product of the relationship between labor and capital. You know, when you spend money at one of these big box stores, the money doesn't stay in the community. Functionally, like the same thing that is happening to the third world on an international scale is happening to small town America on a domestic scale, you know? And you can't fix that by bringing back manufacturing, you know? Because that doesn't fundamentally alter the relationship where money just constantly leaves the small towns and stuff. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but like, what I'm trying to say is that the problem here is global capitalism and the concentration of capital into these small nexuses of the capital class, which tend to live in cities, but, you know, obviously that doesn't mean that any given person in the city is living it up, you know? And what needs to happen is that, like, there needs to be a substantial reinvestment both into the urban working class and the rural working class. And businesses need to be taken out of the hands of like the fucking shareholders and put into the hands of the workers. Yo, what's up, brother boss? That's like what happened. Well, we got some preliminary information for what the tariffs are going to look like, and what the tariffs look like are no new ships from China coming into port by mid-May. And by June, store shelves will start to be completely empty. And I was just explaining how, like, tariffs are kind of like the fascist, faux populist answer to economic woes brought on by capitalism, right? Because tariffs don't, like, fundamentally change the domestic relationship between labor and capital. Accelerationism at its finest? Yeah, that is true. For all, like, all this stuff that I've said in the past, like, 20 minutes sounds really grim. It is very important to note that accelerationists are eating so good right now. Accelerationists have never eaten this good probably in history. You know? On the one hand, oh no, the economic system is on its way to total collapse. On the other hand, oh yeah, the economic system is on its way to total collapse. Because, you know, the economic system is capitalism. You know? And it would be good, I think, for that set of relationships to collapse as early as possible so that it can't, like, drag out and do a shit ton more damage to everybody and everything. Oh no, did I get disconnected or something?
Oh no, I have been disconnected.
How's being an American treating you? We'll be right back after these messages. No, it's treating me like shit, kind of. I got to, just to re-up you on where we are, I got some, yesterday I saw some stuff about, some details about, like, what the tariffs are actually going to mean. No new Chinese ships coming into the West Coast after April 29th, which is tomorrow. No new Chinese ships coming into the East Coast after May 10th, which is less than 2 weeks from now. And then by June, store shelves are going to start being empty of like anything that was made in China, or even stuff that was made in Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand, because that stuff actually has to stop in China and get loaded onto Chinese ships in order to get shipped to America. But it's not just Chinese goods that aren't getting shipped to America, it's anything that gets shipped on a Chinese ship that's no longer coming to America. So, you know, that's how being an American is treating me right now. You know? Thanks for watching, and support the channel if you would be so kind.